Well, thank you for staying with Daybreak and Citizen TV. We apologize for that slight technical hitch. It's been restored now. My guests are still with me in studio. Senator for Kakamega, Boni Elwale, and Senator for Nairobi, Edwin Sifuna. Both of them members of the bipartisan committee. And we started talking about the housing levy and the housing plan. And Halwale, the question was, is this a good plan?
Do you mean I restart?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I think on another occasion I'll want to find out why all of a sudden your machines are starting to fail.
This is like all the time.
Or for the first time, people at Royal Media are starting to live like the rest of us Kenyans. I want to start emphatically by telling Kenyans that the intention of helping Kenyans to have houses is excellent because it is futuristic, it is acceptance of the standard world over that populations will continue migrating from rural areas to urban centers. In fact, in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, more than 50% of world populations will be living in urban centers, Kenya being one of them. Today, the population of Kenyans living in urban centers is actually 28.49%. And it has been increasing yearly. So by putting an instrument in place to ensure that housing becomes cheap to own in urban centers, we are avoiding a situation whereby people migrate from the rural areas to come and convert urban centers into urban slums. It's a fact, and the Senator of Nairobi knows, that the populations that have migrated from Nyanza, from Western into Nairobi, they have come and landed in Kibra slums, they have landed in Mathare slums, they have landed in slums in Kangware. These are the things we are trying to address. So, such a noble program being implemented, and you find people who live in Karen, like young Sifuna, opposing it, it is selfish. They want to preside over populations that are easy to manipulate. We are going to become more and more imaginative, and it is not a question of inventing the wheel. These things are a success elsewhere. Okay. The best cities in the world have managed the challenge of slums. If you take photographs of Singapore and other Asian tigers 50 years ago, they were actually slums. You go here in Rwanda, a small, tiny country the size of Western Province, they are managing their cities. You go to Rwanda, you go back after 3 years, you'll find a place which was a slum, has now been upgraded, a road has gone through, houses have sprung up. What President Ruto is doing is nothing new. It is what Kibaki did. Kibaki started the slum upgrading program in Kibera, and it was working until President Uhuru came to sleep in State House. We are going to encourage President Ruto to ensure that our cities are modern cities and not slums.
Okay. Going by your argument, Miwa, of rural-urban migration, isn't it then more prudent to have subsidized rent rather than owning that apartment? Because if that trend continues over 30 years, like you've mentioned, then it's going to be counterproductive, because essentially what you're saying is that you have to build every other time, because when someone owns the apartment, they can sell it for whatever price that they want. Isn't it better then to have subsidized rent, which is more sustainable in the long run?
Yes, it is that thinking, and given that you and I come from Nyanza and Western respectively, that mentality of paying rent, which has become a norm to the ordinary Muluya, to the ordinary Luo, is because, you know, at the end of the day, you will eventually retire back in Nyanza. And similarly, I'll retire back in Nairobi. But urbanization means you've moved out, never to come back again. Let me give you an example of Kisses, who are slightly different from the Luos. You come from the same region. Because Kisses, there is no land worth talking about in Kisii. When Kisses move into Nairobi, they'll keep on hustling until they buy this little plot, be it in Ongata Rongai or other peri-urban areas, because they know after retirement, they'll not go back. So we want to end this struggle by hustlers, so that the only people who own homes are not the children from the privileged. My children will have no problem because I already have a house in Nairobi. Okay? We are talking about the children of the hustlers. And the people who are shouting, they are not those people who need houses. The people who are shouting are the Azimio leaders who have houses. Given a chance, if you ask half of the crowd in Kamukunji, which they are addressing, do you want to own a house in Nairobi or you don't? The answer will be, I want to own. The next question he'll ask you, how do I go about it? When you roll this program, they will accept it on only one proviso, that you answer the concern which I share with them. I share the concerns with the majority of Kenyans that funds, national funds, have not been managed successfully historically in this country. So the fear we are having is that the housing fund can also get abused. Okay? So we have to make sure that the integrity of the process is guaranteed, governance issues are addressed, and then people will actually give money. Who would refuse buying a house for 3 million, the way we have estimated? The same house they would have had to buy for 11 million. And who cares if it will take 25, 30 years before the house is legally yours? Because you can go ahead and die, and your children will inherit the money and will complete the payment. Why not? Who says with such a low attractive payments that children who succeed their parents will not be in a position to offset what is due?
Okay.
It doesn't bother me at all. This is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage Kenyans to stop listening to leaders who do not want them to have good homes in Nairobi, in Nakuru, in Mombasa, in Kakamega, everywhere.
Okay. Sifuna, is this the right plan?
First, let me tell Khalwale, I don't know why he imagines I live in Karen. I don't live in Karen. Khalwale, I can't afford it yet. Number two, the question of slums, the slums you see in Nairobi, is an income issue. It's not a housing problem. It's an income issue. If you have ever had a conversation with anyone who lives in those areas that you're talking about, they have not chosen to live there, Khalwale. If they had the sort of resources that you and me have, they would not be living there. You must address the question of income of these people, economic empowerment of these people that will enable them to be able to afford proper housing. It is not their desire to live in those places. If they had the resources to get out of those areas, they would. And there is no one in Nairobi or in Kenya who would not enjoy a house with running water, flushing toilet, clean environment. All of us would want those things. But your economic situation is what determines how you live. When I first came to Nairobi, I used to live in a servant's quarter in South B Estate because that's what I could afford. Immediately I got my first job. It used to pay me 40,000 shillings. I was able to afford a 2-bedroom house in Roysambu. I moved from the SQ to the 2-bedroom in Roysambu. Then I got another job. They used to pay me 100,000 shillings in 2010. I moved to a 3-bedroom bungalow in Mlolongo. So, Khalwale, what we are saying is empower people financially. Put money in people's pocket first. I am all for sustainable cities. This urban regeneration program that you're talking about, by the way, even today, we have public participation meetings in Nairobi. Personally, I'm going to attend 2. One in Jericho and another one here in Woodley. Because we're having a conversation with the residents of Nairobi about regeneration of the old city council estates, there has been a lot of hue and cry. But the city county of Nairobi has advertised that today there will be those public participations. I want the residents of Jericho who have been coming to my office to complain that nobody has consulted them, to make sure they attend today's public participation. Now, you can see, Trevor, that we have already been profiled as leaders of Azimio, that it doesn't matter if we are making sense. Khalwale will not listen to us. I saw William Ruto in church the other day saying that the noise that you hear is like the choir that accompanies the preaching, that this noise is the usual noise, which is why I'm saying I have accepted Khalwale, that it doesn't matter how much sense I make, you will not listen to me. But please listen to the Kenyan, the ordinary person. If it is the Azimio people you don't want to hear our voices, that is okay. Listen to the voices of the Kenyans. And the Kenyans are telling you that this housing levy is bad for several reasons. And the first one is, nobody is against housing as a policy. What we are saying is, you have not grown people's incomes. You have done nothing to grow people's incomes. You have not grown even the income earners in this country. You should be able to tell us that this housing levy, you're going to levy 3% on people who are employed. In the period between the time the Bible was put down and now, we have created X number of new jobs that we can then be able to levy this fund on. Number two, Khalwale, you struggle to explain to Kenyans this fund because you know you are hiding the truth. This fund has nothing to do with, housing. It has nothing to do with building houses, Trevor. It is just going to be a fund like any other, like NSSF and NHIF, which is a source of ready money for people in government. That is what we know. And you struggle to explain to Kenyans that this is not a tax. My basic education tells me there are characteristics of a tax. Is that deduction mandatory? If it is mandatory, it is a tax, Khalwale. If I cannot pull out of it, if I have no choice in the matter, it is a tax. If it is deducted at source, it is a tax. If I have no say in it, we did not have a conversation, because if it's a contribution, Trevor, if I'm going to marry a second wife and I call you people for a haram to contribute, I should be able to ask you, well, Useme, you can only give me 10,000, Khalwale, because he's a bit more rich, he gives me 100,000. That's a contribution. But if I say, you people must give me this money, and I will deduct it from your pay slips, and each one of you must give me 100,000, that is not a contribution. It's a tax. And you have to look at it also from the perspective of the employer. Khalwale, if Citizen TV can afford to pay 3 anchors, Trevor and 2 others, and then you impose new levies, this is an increase in the outgoings, the expenses of a company, a business. They will say, okay, we are not able now to afford 3 anchors, we're only going to have 2 anchors. From the employer's perspective, you are increasing the cost of doing business, and you must look at it from that perspective as well. What we know is that if Kenyans' financial position was improved, because these levies, you must improve them in a certain economic context. Let people, first of all, have a breathing space, Khalwale. And you see, you must look at it from the context of all the other taxes that you're putting in place. If you want to deal with the question of housing, address the affordability of land in this country, address the affordability of building materials. You are talking about building low-cost houses, you are imposing another tax, a new tax on imported cement, which will have the spiral effect of even the local manufacturers. The prices of local cement will still go up. What we want to see is a government that has a plan. And the plan is you address the key pain points. Why are we not able to have affordable housing in this country? What is the key problem with affordable housing? It is the question of land. Land in Nairobi has become very expensive, which is why when we talk about regeneration of the old city council estates, places like Jericho and Woodley, where units are sitting on large tracts of land, we have a resource called land. We can use that land to be able to build more units in the same space and make them affordable by reducing that cost of land. And then you can be able to discuss this question of affordability. But even if you say a house is 3 million shillings and a person is earning 500 shillings a day, you are not speaking to that person. You are not speaking to them. They will never be able to afford it. Why do you imagine that everybody is going to have children to continue paying for them? There are people who have no intentions. You know, you have an entire league at home. But there are people whose intention is not to have children. And there are those who are not blessed to have children. They want to enjoy their lives now. You cannot postpone our joy to 25 years. I want to have that house now, Khalwale. Where do you want me to be living in these 25 years before you give me this house of 3 million? So what we want you to do is to listen to Kenyans. Ignore Sifuna. That's okay, because you have profiled me. You have said that nothing good can come out of my mouth. But Kenyans are telling you, it is not Azimio who is saying this. Kenyans are telling you that because pay slips have shrunk, that net incomes have shrunk, you have introduced taxes on just about everything, including the cement that is supposed to be a key factor in construction.
Okay.
Please allow Kenyans to breathe. When our incomes grow because of government policy, when our salaries grow, you can talk to us about further deductions. But as of now, Punda imechoka. Okay. You cannot add a single shilling. All
right. Let's take a quick break. I'll come back with the reaction from Walwale and also see what people are saying. And Trevor Mbing at Citizen TV Kenya use the hashtag Dave. Let's take that quick break. We're back with this housing conversation in just a bit.